Hiya.
Hello, welcome back. So today's topic, we're going to talk about podcasting. We're going to cover off things like why you should listen to podcasts, why you should be guests on podcasts, and why you should think about recording a podcast. Now, we both listen to podcasts.
Yeah, I love podcasts.
Yeah, one of my favorite is There's No Such Thing as a Fish.
Yeah.
All right, purely because I can switch off from it.
I'm going to give Fiona Scott a shout out. PR, not BS.
Yeah,
love
brilliant.
that.
Some really
It's
good
so
top
many
tips on there.
top tips. And obviously Stephen Bartlett is another favourite.
The Diary of a CEO.
Yeah.
And there's some really good.
I really like Caroline
podcasts.
Payton's as well. Podcast about nutrition.
Yeah, I have Caroline. I apologise. I haven't listened.
Yeah, I like that.
I know you like it. And we got some great podcasts that are coming through that are going onto the platform. And of course, as you know, you can promote your podcast on platforms, on our platform, on Cinebound. But let's talk about why we should be a guest on a podcast. All right. Now, I've been guests on. I've lost count.
I love being on podcasts because it's about sharing and educating in a really nice, humane sort of way, I think, isn't it?
And
It's
it
about
helps.
just discovering who you are. And people buy from people buy with purpose. And by being a guest on a podcast, you can share so much about, sharing about your story. It doesn't mean that you need to open up. I'm very open, you're very open, but you don't need to be.
I'm not open to everything. Like this is a top tip, and Fiona Scott gave us this tip actually. She said, don't worry about what you're willing to talk about, just worry about what you're not willing to.
Yeah.
And make sure that those boundaries are set. So there are certain subjects I don't talk about.
Yeah.
My military career I don't really go into because I don't want to. Simple as that. And so we have very set subjects that we don't talk about. So, and I think when you're becoming a guest on a podcast, that is something that you need to.
So what would you say to people who are looking to start a podcast and they really don't know what to do?
It's easy. It really is easy.
I'm as you know, Jamie's the more techie one.
Yeah, but it
really isn't hard.
Right? Basically, all you need to do is to find a piece of software, all right, where you can record into. All right. Top tip, Audacity. It's free, all right? Anybody can use it. Literally, right? Honestly, Tesla could use it. It's that simple, all right?
She's clever.
Yeah, she is. But very, very simple, right? You don't worry about it being, the next best thing. Like, no one cares, right?
I think you've got to think through what your message. That is the key.
What's the subject?
What is your message? And I'm going to give a little hint because I think sometimes people think, say you're an accountant, right? And I came across this podcast, which I thought was fantastic. It was when we were doing the franchise model.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a guest on an accountancy podcast. Now, that doesn't sound like it's going to be very rock and roll, does it? But it was fantastic because this accountant had got in special guests that he'd been working with. And obviously that's how I found it because I wanted to find out more about franchising.
Yeah.
And I listened, and it's a phenomenal idea. If you're maybe sort of more admin based, or, you haven't got, figures might not really be something that you can do a podcast about. But why not interview your guests, your clients that you worked with?
Yeah. Absolutely spot on.
Yeah,
that's pretty much
testimonials, basically.
We literally do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Our guests and our experts that come on our podcasts, they're all members.
Yeah.
Like, we've never had anybody that's not a member. So, we do that. And okay, granted, we got a huge client base, but most people have got a client base of some description.
But also, we've had their guests on who have been a client of somebody else.
Yeah.
So they're great. So if you're doing
Kay Downey shows a prime example. Not Kay Downey, sorry, Karen Thrush.
Karen Thrush, yeah.
Show us exactly that. So what's the benefits of it, right? So first off, you stand out, whether you're on it or hosting it, you stand out as an expert in your field. All right. People learn to know you. They get to know you. They get to trust you. They see you. They can relate to you. They envision you. And then they want to work with you because you're educating them. You're giving them something that is of value to them.
And everywhere you go, people will recognize you. And that's a massive step forward because, if you go out somewhere to an event and people go, oh, I saw you on this, and they feel like they already know you.
Hey, this happens to me a lot, right? But bear in mind, I've done a lot of shows, right? So I've got my own personal brand now. Like if you type in, and it's not a I'm not showing. If you type in Jamie McCouch into Google, I'm the first 50 pages, right? But the majority of it is other stuff I've done, other shows. I mean, at the moment, it's the Purpose People podcast with Daryl Irwin, right? So that is the one that's happening at the moment.
But this is why it's
current.
important, isn't it? Yeah. If you can get your name out there, people are going to remember who you are. And if they recognize things about what you do, they're going to want to buy from you because they find that they already built a relationship with you. Even if you might have only met them a handful of times, if they can watch the shows. And we do this. I mean, people don't like to talk about it, but we all kind of go on social media and find out about people, or we go on to Google reviews. TripAdvisor is a massive one if you're looking for a hotel. Whatever we look to buy, we usually try and find out beforehand. So that's something about them.
Yeah. So that would be my my tip would be if you may not want to host one, and that's fine, but definitely proactively look to become a guest, right? And some of the shows are like we had a meeting yesterday, and we're not going to be recording till December, right? That's perfectly fine. You're pre-booking it into your diary. That's fine, but you should be doing it.
And I also think don't be too frightened about how many downloads they had, because everyone has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think, downloads, it's great. Obviously, the more traction to podcasts, the better. But it still gives you visibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it still gives you content.
And it rises you as an individual and your brand up SEO, right?
Yeah.
So, like at the moment, I've done a TED talk. I'm talking about me because I just understand me as an example. I did a TED talk, and if you type in my name at the moment and go to video, it's actually the People podcast comes up first because it's more current than the TED talk, even though the audience of the TED talk is.
But that's a typical example.
Yeah.
Because it will. So if you are a solopreneur working on your own, the chances are that if somebody Googles your name, there's lots of other people going to come up. So if you've had a lot of visibility through things like podcasts or articles, which is why obviously PR is really important in business as well. But anything like that will help you to rank on SEO. So,
And it just starts to help you and develop you. And to be fair, it's the easiest way of getting your name out there. It's the easiest way of ranking on SEO.
If you're wondering what SEO stands for, watch one of the other videos with Sam Hollis, because that will tell you everything about SEO.
So what about listening to podcasts?
Well, I think it's educational.
Yeah,
and I love business podcasts because I find at the moment that it's hard to find time to read business books.
Yeah.
So, and if I read business books in late at night, my mind will just go wild and I'll just come up with 100,000 ideas. So that's not a good thing.
No, because she doesn't sleep.
Listening to podcasts when you're in the car traveling somewhere, sometimes when I'm walking the dog. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends on what headspace you need, because sometimes you just need to switch off as well. But I just find that you learn so much and keep current about what's going on in business, keep current about what's going on in the rest of the world as well,
And sometimes you'll find a good podcast. Just download it, listen to it for a bit, and then go off it and come back and come. That's the joys of it. It's not like picking up or putting down a book. You can kind of come in and out as you wish, and some people will listen to this show and they won't listen to another show for another 6 months. We know that. We completely get it. But it's out there, and it's out there forever. Once it's out into the ethos, then you just never know when someone will come up and will have watched it.
Yeah. So to conclude everything that we've said, I think if you're looking to host a podcast, just understand your message that you want to give. Invite guests on, invite your customers, because that's an amazing trick.
Get your subject right as well. Get your subject right. For ours, it's all about networking. That's obviously where we are, but we're always about, how you can improve your brand, how you can improve your name, how you can improve your presence. Okay. And effectively that's what we do. So we have our message out.
And then you said about Audacity. So that's another.
Yeah, utilize the free. Yeah. So Audacity out there, it's nice and free. There's loads of podcasts.
So we're just concluding the kind of show. So what would you say about microphones? Do you have to spend a fortune?
No, not at all. So my first podcast, which was the Squash Pod, right? We got that into over 100 different countries, and my microphone cost me $9.99, and it plugged into a aux cable, and I recorded everything on my phone. Everything.
Yeah. It can be super, super easy.
Yeah.
So you got your message, you got this, you got everything. Where to start next, Davey?
So the next thing you need to do then is find a podcast host.
Yeah.
We use Spreaker, but there's plenty out there. I don't know them all, right? But there's absolutely loads of them. Deezer is another really popular one because you get so much time for free. And I mean, it's pennies. You're looking at like $10, $15 a month for hosting a podcast. And then once you've created, it's not like the Ark, all right? You build it, they won't just come. So you need to make sure your description is as you would any blog or vlog, right? And your description is right. And because these go out on Spotify, on Apple Tunes, on all of these, you get it out onto everything. So make sure the description's right. Use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Use it because that's what it's there for. And it will give you all the tags. It will give you all of the focus points, everything. You just drop it all in and it's just copy and paste into the thing. You don't need to overthink it.
I think that's the thing that a lot of people do. They overthink it.
Yep.
And yeah, I think we've heard that a lot, haven't we? About people overthink what they're going to say, they overthink what they're going to do. And it's the same if you're going on to be a guest on a podcast. Some people will ask you to do kind of a resume of what you're going to talk about. Personally, I love when you can just go in and just talk.
Do you know what, right? So, and that's, I will give that actually as another tip. I know we've kind of gone over on the show a little bit, but if you're going to bring guests on the show, don't ask for War and Peace, right? Because someone like me, and I'm a very good guest, right? I can come on, I can talk about a lot of different subjects, all right? You give me a massive form to do, and I will come on. Because I just can't be bothered. And it's not, forms to me are like kryptonite.
But that's because you're dyslexic.
Yeah, so I'm starting out on a back foot. And then I'm going into the show so bloody flustered because I've had to remember what I put on. I just don't work that way. And the amount of times I've done these forms and then we haven't asked any of the questions that are on it. Because podcast should be about conversation. It's not an interrogation. It's an interview. It's a conversation.
Yeah.
We don't prepare for these. We just sit down and go, right, what's our subject? What's our 5 points? Right, okay, let's talk about those 5 points.
Yeah.
That's how we do it. And this is why sometimes we go off on tangents and go down rabbit holes. But that is what makes a good show.
Yeah.
So that's my top tip. Don't overcomplicate it. Just keep it simple.
And be yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to be yourself. You've got to be, because that's essentially what you want people to see is who you are.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a
great way to end it.
Yeah.
Just be yourself. Don't overcomplicate it. Get on as many shows as you can. Put yourself out there. Step outside your comfort zone because great things only happen outside of your comfort zone. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.